So we're moving on to a new topic, and the focus of this topic is going to be to what extent has economic globalisation created an opportunity for countries to develop? We're just going to pick apart that question first, because there are some tricky words in there that we need to get a grips with before we can understand where the topic is going. So first, the question is about economic globalisation, and economic means to do with the economy. So we need to know what the economy is. The economy is the system in which goods and services are created and how they are traded. When we say a system, what we mean is a series of interconnected things. So we look at this diagram on the screen. The economy is in the middle. And around the economy, we have all these different interconnected things that make up the system. So employment, what jobs do people have? How are people spending their money? What goods or what things are people spending their money on? What services or experiences are people spending their money on? What are the banks doing? What kind of trade is taking place? So are countries selling goods to another country, or are they buying in goods? What kind of businesses make up the economy? And of course, that is linked to the kind of jobs that people have. So all these things are linked together and they make up a system in which goods and services are created and how they are traded. That system is heavily influenced by the government. The government is a group of people that make laws that decide how a country is going to be run. So the choices that people in government make affect the economy. For example, if a government doesn't create a good quality education system, that means that people will end up in jobs or employment that are poorly paid. That means that people won't have a lot of money to spend. So the economy is going to be small. So we've talked about what the economy is. We'll move on to globalisation in a second. Next, we're going to talk about what development is. You did do some work on development in year 7. So just take a moment, pause the video and think about what development is. Development is the process of improving an area's quality of life. And quality of life means how good it is to live in that area. Quality of life is quite a complicated thing because it's very difficult to decide what makes an area good to live in. But we can break up quality of life into lots of different things. So we could look at income and jobs. Are people earning enough money? We could look at housing conditions. Do people live in good quality houses? We could look at health. Are people living for a long time? Are they free from disease? Education. Do they go to good schools? Do they go to schools for a good number of years? The environment. What's the quality of the environment like? Are they living in an area that's very polluted? Are they living in an area that's very attractive? Personal security. Do they feel safe where they live? Are they able to vote? Are they working 12-hour days, 7 days a week and never have any time to do things for leisure? What's the infrastructure like? Are the roads good quality? Are people able to access the internet? Can they move around? Are there things for them to do in their free time? So all these different things make up an area's quality of life. If an area has a poor quality of life, we say that it is a less developed country. If an area has a good quality of life, we tend to call those countries developed. The other thing that we need to briefly talk about is globalisation. Because if we go back to the question, it is to what extent has economic globalisation created an opportunity for countries to develop? Globalisation is the process of countries becoming more connected. Economic globalisation is specifically about the economy. So economic globalisation is countries' economies becoming more connected, becoming linked together, and mainly through an increase in international trade. So countries buying and selling each other goods and services. And you can see that if you look around your house. If you look at what's in your fridge, you might see that you've got foods that have come from lots of different countries. Or you might see foods that are culturally from a different country. For example, I've got Thai sweet chili sauce. If you look at the clothes in your wardrobe, you'll notice that they're made in different countries. They might have been made in India or China or Indonesia. And then they've been sold in the UK. So your food and your clothes links you to other countries. Now, if you went out into the high street, you might see a shop like McDonald's. And McDonald's is a company that operates across the world. So here in the top left, we can see a picture of McDonald's in Nigeria. Nigeria is located in Northern Africa. So McDonald's is a company that operates across multiple countries. And all of these things are examples of how countries are connected to other countries. So if we go back to our question, has economic globalisation created an opportunity for countries to develop? So has the fact that countries' economies are now more connected made it easier for countries to improve their quality of life? And to what extent is that true? Has it made it a lot easier, or hasn't it made it easier at all? Maybe it's more challenging. And this question is going to take us across a whole section of work. Pause this video. Take a moment to complete quiz 1. Quiz 1 is linked in the comments underneath this, in the description underneath this video. Alright, so I said we're going to answer this question over the course of several lessons. In order to answer the top question, we need to be able to know how a country's economy changes over time. In order to be able to do that, we need to know how we can measure economic change and what is the link between economic growth and employment. Thinking back to year 7, how can we measure the economy of a country, or how do we know how wealthy a country is? Pause the video to think about that for a moment. So we can measure the economy of a country by GNI per capita, or gross national income per capita. And that is the total amount of goods and services produced in a country divided by the population. So all the things that a country produces, plus all the services, like people working in hotels, teachers, divided by the total number of people in that country. So here is a graph of China's GNI per capita from 1990 all the way through to 2017. Describe the trend shown on this graph. So what has happened to China's GNI per capita from 1990 to 2015? Well, since 1990, China's GNI per capita has increased from $1,000 to $19,000. So what I've done there is I've said, using data from the graph, what has happened over time. It's increased, but I've been very specific and I've said it's increased from $1,000 to $19,000. The GNI per capita grew most quickly from 2005 to 2019. So there I've given even more detail from the graph. Another way of describing the trend is that China's economy has grown. So we can measure a country's economy by GNI, and we describe changes in that. If a GNI is increasing, we would say that the economy is growing. If a GNI has decreased, we would say that the economy has shrunk. Brief recap then. Define the economy. Pause the video, read through the answers on the screen, and just have a think about what the correct answer is. So, an economy is a system in which goods and services are created and how they are traded. If you thought it was number one, GNI per capita is how we measure the size of the economy. It's not what the economy is. If a country's economy is growing, what happens? Pause the video, read through the answers, think about what the correct answer is. If a country's economy is growing, more goods and services are being produced. Well, how do we know that? Well, the way that we measure a country's economy is by GNI per capita. And GNI per capita measures the total number of goods and services being produced. So if we go back to our graph of China, the GNI per capita has increased, and we describe that as the economy growing. If the GNI per capita is increasing, that must mean that goods and services are increasing. So, what is the link between what kind of jobs people have, employment, and economic growth? Whether the GNI per capita is increasing. There are 4 employment sectors. So there are 4 different categories that geographers use to describe the types of jobs that people have. The first category, or the first economic sector, is primary industry. Now, people working in primary industry collect raw materials. Pause the video and think about what examples of primary industries are being shown in the pictures. So we got farming, mining, oil rigging and logging. These are all things that collect raw materials. The second employment sector is secondary industry. Secondary industries manufacture goods or products, they make things. What examples, I just showed you the answers. What examples of secondary industry are shown in the pictures? Pause the video, have a think about it. So we got car manufacturing, construction, food processing and toy manufacturing. These are all industries where people are making things. The third employment sector is tertiary industry. Tertiary industries provide a service. So they're not making anything, but they provide a service for people. What examples of tertiary industry are shown in the pictures? Pause the video, have a think about it. So we've got sales, people who work in shops, we call those people who work in sales. Healthcare, banking or accountancy, and education, so teachers. All these people, they don't produce anything, they just provide a service for people. So taking teaching, for example, my service that I'm providing you is I'm increasing your knowledge. But we don't see any physical end product of that process. The fourth employment sector is the quaternary industry. What examples of the quaternary industry are shown in the photographs? Pause me, have a think about it. So quaternary industries are high-tech research and design. And we can see We've got aerospace engineering. So that's a really high tech, it's very complicated, it involves a lot of electronics. Software, hardware design, so the people that design computers and the programs that run on computers. Pharmaceutical manufacturing, that's people who are making drugs for doctors and hospitals, medicines. That's in the quaternary industry because it involves a lot of research. They have to do a lot of medical research before they can come out with any drug. And you might know at the moment that people are researching vaccines for COVID. And that's taken a lot of time because it takes a lot of time to research and design the vaccine. Aeronautical engineering, that's when people manufacture planes. And like aerospace engineering, it involves a lot of electronics and a lot of very complicated engineering. So unlike secondary industries where they're making things like toys or cars, to work in the quaternary industry, you have to be very highly qualified. So you'll have to have a degree, or even the level above a degree, which is a doctorate in engineering, aerospace engineering, or medicine, to be able to do these jobs. Okay. What are the 4 employment sectors? Give examples. In your books, write down the numbers 1 to 4. See if you can remember what the employment sectors are, and see if you can remember any examples we've been through from those employment sectors. Pause me while you do that. Take a few minutes now to read through the model answer on the screen. Add in anything you missed out, and pause me while you do that. Now, complete quiz 2 is linked in the description below. So we know that a country's economy is the system in which goods and services are produced and traded. And within a country's economy, we can look at the types of jobs that people have. And we know that there are 4 sectors, and we can see those in the key. The primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary sector. And people in those sectors do slightly different jobs. As a country develops, the types of jobs that people do changes. And this is summarised in the Fisher-Clarke model, which is on the screen. The least developed countries we would describe as being in a pre-industrial stage, where most people work in the primary sector, collecting raw materials, and few people work in the tertiary and the secondary sector. We can see, look here, only 10% of people are employed in jobs that are providing a service like education. As a country develops, it moves into a new stage, the industrial stage. In the industrial stage, the amount of people working in the secondary sector, manufacturing things, increases rapidly, whilst the amount of people working in the primary sector decreases rapidly. During the industrial stage, most people, about 45% of people according to this model, work in the secondary industries, so they're manufacturing products or goods. But as a country develops further over time, the number of people working in the secondary industries decreases, whereas the number of people working in the tertiary industries providing a service increases rapidly. And we start to see in the post-industrial stage a small percentage of people, roughly 5% of people, working in the quaternary sector, those high-tech, highly skilled jobs like aeronautical engineering. When a country moves from the pre-industrial stage to the industrial stage, we say that it is industrialising, or going through the process of industrialisation. When a country moves from the industrial to the post-industrial stage, we say it is deindustrialising or going through the process of deindustrialisation. So industrialisation and deindustrialisation, they're nouns. Industrialising and deindustrialising, they're the verb form. So what do we call it when a country is moving from pre-industrial to industrial stage? What should go on the blue arrow? And what do we call it when a country is moving from the industrial to the post-industrial stage? Pause me while you think about that. So pre-industrial to industrial, we call that industrialisation. When a country moves from industrial to post-industrial, we call it deindustrialisation. Now, economic growth is fastest when a country is industrialising. That means that a country's GNI per capita increases the most when it's moving from the pre-industrial into the industrial stage. Why is economic growth fastest when a country is industrialising? Well, we know that GNI per capita measures the total amount of goods and services a country produces divided by the population. So as more people begin to work in this secondary industry, more goods are being produced because the secondary industry is to do with manufacturing. What we find is that countries moving from the pre-industrial to the industrial stage, that happens quite fast. So we get a large increase in the number of people working in manufacturing, which results in a large increase in the country's GNI per capita. And we describe that as the economy growing quickly. Now, complete quiz 3 is linked in the description below. Pause me while you do that. And that's the end of our geography lesson. We've looked at what an economy is, the different types of jobs within a country's economy, and how the types of jobs that people have affects economic growth.